Hello, everybody. Welcome to week number 2 in Force February 2021 here on Film Seizure. I am Jeff Arbuckle. With me, Jason Oliver. How's it going?
Hey, good. Hey. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Doing my new thing. I don't want to make that my new thing.
No, make that your new thing. That's brilliant. Also, as always, Chuck Moore. Chuck Moore, how are you doing?
Hey, how you doing? It's Jason's new thing.
I feel like it's already
stolen my thing.
It's already taken the nation by storm.
Yeah. Yeah, flattery.
So this week we have a brand new it's a brand new episode. It's brand new nothing else. But we are talking about somebody that we haven't yet talked about on the show before. And it is somebody that I have some knowledge to talk about, and we'll discuss that a little bit more. But that is
it Joe DiMaggio?
Yes, it's Joe DiMaggio.
Okay.
This is the Filipino director Cirio Santiago and his film Death Force, which is also titled Vengeance Will Be Mine, or Vengeance Is Mine. I'm sorry, that's the other title. This is a 1978 flick. And it's an interesting flick because it is certainly, I think, promoted in a lot of different ways, but the movie isn't really what it is promoted to be. But I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. So let's start, I suppose, by I guess let me just go ahead and get started with the stuff that I do know about Santiago. He had been in the business for like a super long time. He was born in the 30s in the Philippines, and he has been directing movies since the mid 50s. Like, I don't even think he was like 19 when his first film came out. And he had been, and he even like was producing movies at the age of like 17. But he has like 100 director credits, 83 producer credits, a handful of writing credits and so forth. But he was kind of, he's basically the Filipino Roger Corman. He would kind of follow trends. And by the time you got to the 70s, you were getting into more of exploitation and at times sleaze movies. And what's interesting is that he is best known to a lot of people who watch some of the movies that we watch, particularly from the perspective of movies that are sold through like boutique people like Vinegar Syndrome, Severin, so on and so forth. But in those circles, he's pretty much known as a sleaze maestro. And he has done some sleazy films. Not sleazy like you would get like your Jess Franco's or Joe D'Amato's and stuff like that. But sleazy in the sense that, yeah, he's done a pretty infamous rape revenge movie in the 80s called Naked Vengeance. He did a movie called Vampire Hookers, which is, I think, partly comedy, partly just the excuse to have breast all over the place.
Apparently that was released by Vinegar Syndrome with Death Force.
It's a double. Yeah,
it's like one of their driving collection, I think. Yeah.
And then, but he also did movies.
I wonder if they cleaned it up. I wonder if because we watched it on Amazon, and it looked pretty shoddy. I wonder if they cleaned it up a little. DVD release.
I would not count on that. Actually, I wouldn't.
I don't know. I don't know what elements they had.
Yeah.
Generally, they can't do much and it didn't get a Blu-ray release, so it makes me wonder if they just didn't have
it did get a Blu-ray release a few years ago in Germany, but I don't know. But no, he had done. He's done movies like The Mothers, which was released also through Vinegar Syndrome, which is that's sort of sleazy. There's a shower scene in there. There's like slave trade stuff going on in there. But he also did, well, like, for example, this movie that we're going to talk about here, Death Force, it's like rated PG-13 or something, so it's like there's not really a whole lot of, there's hardly any language in this movie. So he just kind of made whatever kind of would be kind of a hit.
This movie would not be rated PG-13 today.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know where that rating came from, because there's a good amount of nudity and there's a lot of decapitations.
Right. Well, I don't even know where I saw that it was like rated PG or whatever, but it's like, it might have just been like, hey, this is 70s PG or whatever. But no, I mean, this movie is not particularly high on a great deal of sex or sleaze, really. Which really kind of makes this movie kind of interesting, because I take it as more of a drama than I even do an action movie.
Yeah.
But one movie that he did do that kind of coalesced all of these kind of ideas, he did the movie TNT Jackson, which, by the way, you can watch that movie with me this Saturday on B Movie Enema of the Series. Just go over to YouTube, guys. Subscribe and shit. It'll be there. Shameless plug there. But he did a lot of war movies too. I mean, a lot of the 80s stuff that he put out was just, action fodder just to have on the, on the video store shelves and to play on cable. The one thing that I would say is particularly interesting about him was he wanted to make movies that starred Americans. And he had the ability to bring them over to the Philippines. I mean, hell, this movie is shot both in Asia and in Los Angeles. So it's not like he was making everything on the cheapest possible way, but he wanted a lot of Americans in his movies. And there were a few Americans that he could get, but one thing he started doing in the 70s was he was primarily casting blacks as his stars. And this was, of course, during a time in the 70s where you would have blaxploitation films. This is not a blaxploitation film. It's an exploitation film, but this does not count as a blaxploitation movie. And this movie, the three primary stars in this movie are African Americans. And he was able to get basically hooked up with these people through other producers and casting people that he would make friends with. And they would say, he would say, hey, who can come over here? Who's an actor that wants to get, just some credits under their belt, basically. And what you would end up getting is you would get people like who's in this movie, people like Leon Isaac Kennedy and Jane Kennedy, which was Leon Kennedy's wife. James Englehart, who had been, this was actually, I think, his last role, but he would be able to get these people over there, and he's not giving them movies and scripts that are really doing anything but just saying these are Americans. The quote unquote blackness of this is not really played up for anything other than just that's just who's in the movie, which I think really put him in a lot of really good graces with a lot of the African American actors of the time, because he wasn't exploiting them. He wasn't exploiting things that that could be shown in other blaxploitation movies. Like Leon Isaac Kennedy is actually outspoken saying he doesn't really like blaxploitation movies because oftentimes it elevated bad, kind of not so great ideas like being a pimp or being a hooker or being a drug dealer or being a dirty cop or a vigilante or something. In this, yeah, he's a gangster, but there's no real. It's not like he's a gangster in Crenshaw. He's just a gangster.
No,
Well,
it plays more like an Italian mafia almost.
Well, exactly. I was just going to say his partner is Italian.
Right.
So it's like an Italian and an African American in the 70s who were buddies in Vietnam. Became friends in Vietnam who decide to be gangsters in L.A. when they get back. Right. So it's like, yeah, there's really no. Things get sort of racial later when you get a sense of like there's a Japanese, mafia in town, and there are definite like racial factions, but that's just reality anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, hey, where can I go and get some information about what's going on? Well, these guys are this group, or these guys are that group, or the Italian guy wants to run a pasta place, but at the same time, nobody bats an eye. And I mean, and you would like to think that in 1978, people aren't necessarily batting an eye when the white guy is partners with a black guy and they both walk into the spaghetti shop, which is supposedly a nice spaghetti shop.
The most racial this gets, it's a funny moment between the Italians and one of McGee's black gangster henchmen. I think it's even Morelli, right? He's somebody comes out and says, "Hey, I got your lasagna for you," and he's like, it's very just stereotypical Italian, and he's like, "Great," and he hands it off to one of the black henchmen, and he says, "Take care of this for me," and the guy goes, "Right on."
Yeah. But I mean,
like,
that
I interpreted that to mean take care of this for me, as in go ahead and eat this, because he was very excited.
Yeah, right. And to be honest with you, I mean, that was probably just the guy just probably said that on the spot. It was probably not even.
It's probably just him.
Way. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like, here's the thing: there are things that happen in this movie that if the movie was made here, it would have been. It wouldn't have been James Englehart. It would have been like, I don't know,
Charles Bronson.
Well, Charles Bronson, or even like Charlton Heston, just making a movie for a paycheck. He's the guy who got trapped on an island, and so there's no element of this movie that has anything to do with race aside from things that are actually vitally important to the story.
So what is this story? What is Death Force?
Yeah. So basically what this is you start off in around Vietnam, and the way that it goes is that James Englehart, who plays Doug Russell, Morelli, who is the Italian guy that's kind of buddied up here, and McGee, who's Leon Kennedy. They are they're basically they're basically on the trail of a heist, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they are going to sell gold, essentially, to a quote-unquote Chinaman. And from that, they're going to basically go off and enjoy riches, essentially.
Build a drug empire in the United States is what Morelli wants.
That's the plan. That's what Morelli wants to do.
Now, I don't think that's necessarily what Doug wanted to do.
No.
He wants to go home. He wants to go home to his wife, and that's all he cares about.
Right.
Yeah.
And Morelli and McGee decide we can't have this guy knowing what we're about, and I think they're just gonna take his shit, basically, and they kill him, or they attack him, they slice his throat and stab him a few times, and then they dump him over in the water. He ends up, though, washing ashore on one of the islands of the Philippines, where a couple of stranded Japanese fighters from World War II have basically been living for the past 30 years. And the two Japanese guys are like phenomenal.
Oh, this is my whole favorite part of the movie.
Yeah,
I mean, him with the two Japanese guys is the best.
Right, because there's an older guy who is lower ranked than the other guy, and the other guy wants to, like he lives by the samurai code essentially.
Mhm.
And the older guy, he bosses him around. The poor old guy, he's told to like carry the Doug Russell to their camp, and is like, "Oh, this isn't a job for one man, or for a man my age."
For a guy as old as me, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's always preparing the fish. He always has to go and fish while the other guy just meditates or whatever. It's kind of like an old married couple that he's come across.
Yep. And here, while that's going on, while he's being rescued, and this is like probably my biggest problem with this movie, there are constant cuts to what McGee and Morelli are doing.
Yeah, they're consolidating their power. They're taking over LA basically with paintball guns.
Yep. made me a little dizzy how often they cut in between both groups.
Yeah.
I would like to see a restored version of this if there is one, because there was a lot of like background tracing of character movement and stuff that was messing with my head.
Yeah.
But it was cool. So yeah, he meets the Japanese guys. They decide to save him. At the same time, Morelli and McGee are trying to take down this guy named Russo. So they're killing like parts of his gang. Go ahead, Jeff. You look like you were going to say something there.
Yeah, at one point they do end up tracking down Russo. They go into what looks like a card game, I think is what they were doing.
And they say my favorite line.
Yep. Russo, guess what? You're dead. Blow him away with Tommy guns. Yeah.
With paintball guns.
Yeah.
But they're Tommy paintball guns.
Tommy paintball guns.
Yeah.
And then my second favorite line after this is they cut back to to Russell.
I wrote
as he's
this one down too.
Yeah, he's kind of coming to, and he says, "You damn mother humpers!"
Yeah,
a couple times, and
he says it a few times.
Yeah.
There's a whole joke with the Japanese guys on the island about it. It's really great.
He wakes them up. They wake him up, and they're like, "Well, what does that mean?" He's like, well, "I think the bastards that tried to kill me."
No,
or whatever.
It's some old friends of mine.
Yeah, he said, "They're not your friends. We the mother humpers now."
We your friends. We mother humpers.
Yeah. I also like at one point after they had brought in, Doug into the little cave where they live, the older Japanese guy is kind of shuffling by with like, I don't know, like fucking gigantic barrels of water or something they can barely carry, and he looks at Doug and he looks back at his buddy and he's like, "If he died, do I get bed back?"
Yep.
So yeah, and basically at this point, you've got the guys who did Doug Russell wrong, gaining more and more and more power. McGee is trying to move in on Doug's wife Maria.
Yep.
And he even sets it up because she's like a nightclub singer. He makes it so that she cannot get a job in all of the world. Anyway.
Yeah. He owns everything.
Not even at McDonald's.
Well, she can at least get a coffee there.
Yeah. She can't get a job there.
Right.
No.
And so basically it's, like basically he's trying to force her into needing him.
Yeah.
And that's dirty. I mean, that, like, you don't see that too often, but that's kind of that's something that somebody would probably really try to do.
That was clever too, because it was unexpected to me when the nightclub owner that she was a successful singer at, packing the house, like people were coming to see her, says, "Your contract's up. You can't work here anymore." And I'm like, well, this guy's so stupid. He's making her money. Why would... And then I'm like, oh, McGee is freezing her out of everything.
Yep.
And they go out of their way to show you how good she is. I mean, that's a pretty good little sequence of her singing in the nightclub.
That's a good little song too. Yeah.
Good little song. Yep.
There's some really nice very relaxing music in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it even starts with
Yeah.
some really relaxing music with the title card and everything. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, what is this movie?
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised at the fact that they were telling a story. After watching the trailer and getting into this movie, I expected it just to be him smashing light bulbs and water coolers and, just throwing his sword around for a minute.
Yeah.
Or, an hour and 30 minutes.
But no, this is almost 2 hours long.
Yeah, and we get that sweet little moment with little Jimmy. That's
Little Jimmy jamming
on his guitar. I'm like, I could watch that for like an hour. That would be like a famous TikTok or
completely
Twitter video now.
That is actually
People would
James
fawn over
Englehart. That's actually James Englehardt's son too.
Really?
I was wondering
his son?
I was wondering that.
You've got. So there's two things going on. Back in the States, you have McGee and Morelli consolidating power. You also have McGee, trying to make the moves on Maria, which, by the way, Morelli is kind of a dipshit. He should be like saying, you absolutely cannot be with that. Like, he just is like, you're chasing skirts. Leave her alone or whatever. He should be like, in no way, shape, or form should you have anything to do with this person. Because as it turns out, it probably makes things worse by the end of this movie. But they're kind of, they've had so many victories. They don't really, they get, they're a little bit sloppy. And McGee in particular, is showing that by going after Doug's wife. Meanwhile, Doug is back on the island and he's learning how to be a samurai, which is fucking awesome.
There's some really great stuff here.
Yeah, if I
there's
ever
really
get marooned, I want to be marooned with some old World War II Japanese guy who's like, hey, you know what? I'll be your Yoda. Let's turn you into a samurai. And I'd be like, in.
Well, I like a lot of this. I like a lot of this because there's this there are kind of two sides of the coin, right? Doug really wants to get back to his wife and his son who he's never met, and that's understandable. But the Japanese guy the older one is trying to give him a couple different lessons here. First, that the way of the art of the samurai, and that it's not to be used for vengeance. It's to be used. I forget what he says, but not for vengeance, essentially, right?
Yeah, he's all about the honor of it.
Yeah. He's also trying to explain to him that the war's never ended for him, right? Yeah. So I'm still serving my emperor. I'm still carrying out my orders. And then he's also trying to teach him that no one may ever come. You need to also start making peace with the fact that you may never leave this island, right? And he says something like, what do I do here? We have plenty of food. There's sunshine. I read. I study my art of the samurai. I know that sounds like a pretty good life, and he's made peace with that life. But Doug isn't having that either, right?
No, and there is also the element that even if there was an opportunity to return to Japan, you don't really get the impression that the samurai dude would go. I think he would
go. I think he would go because McGee is trying to tell him it's not the same Japan anymore. Mm-hmm. You would not be going back to what you think is there.
McGee is giving him a lesson too. Absolutely. Right, but I think moved on. Your emperor now cuts ribbons. When a new bridge opens. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, it's like he's also quick to say that what Doug is telling him is just more more American propaganda lies.
Propaganda, right.
So it's almost like, well, if you can return, but you would be a man out of time. You wouldn't
Well, he doesn't realize that either. He's kind of stuck in the past because he keeps talking about Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny that he brings up Joe DiMaggio all the time. And like Jason said, he's still living his war. He's still acting like it's the same time period. He doesn't know how to evolve because he doesn't know how the world has moved forward without him. It would be 100% a fish out of water if he went home. But I think he would gladly in my personal opinion, go back to Japan to be a war hero.
Yeah, maybe.
But he
Yeah.
has also mentioned that people have come to the island, and he's
But
killed
they're
them.
enemies.
They're enemies, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so
we do-
that is something that because the Philippines, the Filipino Army or Coast Guard or whatever show up, and this is something that I wouldn't be terribly surprised. And of course, I don't really know for sure, but
I'll draw the sword. Sorry, draw the sword for peace, not the cause of vengeance. That is his lesson.
Before the Filipinos show up, I want to bring up
Yeah,
one
I
other.
do too. I have a lot of other stuff too.
There's
Go
one
ahead.
great. So it's kind of like Karate Kid at first when he starts training him to be a samurai. He's giving him odd jobs instead of training him the sword.
Yeah.
And McGee obviously doesn't realize that there's a purpose to this, right?
no, it's not McGee. It's Russell, Doug Russell.
Russell, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Doug.
But when he finally does give him a bamboo sword to fight with, Russell like complains like, no, I want to use a real sword. And like, I can't remember their names, the two Japanese gentlemen, but he said, if these were swords, this would be your final lesson. Which is so great. It's so great. I'm
line.
like, this is the best thing.
He also chastises him by saying, you can't just learn how to use the sword in 1 hour and be
Right.
and be
He's
a
like,
samurai.
yeah, he's like,
You want to learn everything in an hour. It can't be done.
Right.
good thing we have nowhere to go. Basically, we're going to be here for a while. So
And he gets that. Doug is quick on the uptake after that. He after he gets his ass handed to him by the old Japanese man with bamboo sticks, he's kind of like, oh shit, I do have a lot to learn.
yeah. And he's trying to cut the coconuts.
He's practically defeating him with one hand too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all about the movement. It's all about the precision. It's all about the mindset too. And which is interesting because like also I had mentioned this to you, Jason, separately, but he is Doug Russell is actually already intelligent. He doesn't learn things about being a samurai and is suddenly worldly. He already kind of is. He just doesn't know this part of it because he even says later on, much later in the movie, once he gets back, because I think the Japanese car driver or the cab driver says something to him about, oh, how did you know that, or how did you do that, or whatever. And he says something to the effect of, well, it's the advantages of being educated. So you already get the impression that Doug Russell is not a dummy. None of these characters in this movie are really all that stupid. They do some stupid things from time to time, particularly the bad guys, but they're not all, it's Santiago writing a story where people are just normal people. They're not, they're not filled with rage. They're not, they're not just a bunch of dummies. These are actually people with, a lot of common sense, but also a lot of intelligence. Beyond.
I think my one complaint I would have on the scripting and direction of the movie from the story standpoint I think this is a movie that I would have liked to have seen more time pass.
Sure.
Right? I would have liked to have seen him stay on the island for years. I would really like to see him, learning Japanese, because he comes back kind of semi-fluent in Japanese, and that doesn't make really any sense.
The only thing that I thought of was that he maybe had known that even before being on the island.
That's a maybe, but yeah. And I would have liked to have seen him, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I would have liked to really have seen him struggle with the tenets of the art of samurai and what that really means, once he does get back to LA, because I don't think he goes through that crisis that I would have liked to have seen.
If he goes with vengeance and takes a hard loss, something like that, instead of being,
I would almost say though that No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Well,
ahead. I'll
but no,
save
I mean, when we talk about the ending, I think is where we see, him learning that lesson. But I don't want to jump to the ending yet.
No, that's fine. Because what I was going to say is that I kind of look at this as he takes what he learns and he incorporates it into what he is and what he knows. He's not, because like, what's the first thing he does when he gets off the plane with the samurai swords in his bag in his carry-on luggage? He's like, tell me where the fucking these guys are. It's like he instantly the first thing he does is he tries to find his wife. Second thing is, hey, have you heard of these guys?
Yeah.
I want, it's like, it's time to pay the, but
I think the cabbie actually brings one of them up. And then he's like, you mean Jimmy Morelli? And he's like, you know them? I take back everything I said.
Right. Yeah, the cabbie's got a lot of info. Yeah,
he does.
Yeah. It's kind of funny and endearing, like a buddy comedy almost. They become friends like immediately.
Yeah, they team up. It's
yeah.
He it doesn't end well for him either.
No, I was bummed out by that.
Yeah, but I think where it gets really interesting, the relationship between Doug and his Japanese shogun mentor, is when the Philippine military show up.
Yeah, and this is after we haven't mentioned that the older Japanese man is carrying water up the mountain into the cave, and unfortunately this is hilarious how it happens.
It's kind of a silly way to die.
Yeah, he drops the water bucket, loses his balance, and flies like 700 feet down a mountain. But it was sad because those two characters were really well done, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this puts them, in a position where there's just the two of them left. They have a really good talk, sitting on rocks, where McGee is like, well, I'm going to go home. Doug, I keep doing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this would be a bad place to confuse these two characters.
Yeah, Russell.
One is real bad.
Russell is talking to the samurai he's been learning from, and he's like, no, we're going to be saved. I'm going to go home. And the other guy's like, you need to resign yourself to the fact that we are never leaving here. Yeah. I'm going to die here. He just knows it.
Yeah.
And then at that point is when the Filipinos show up.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about this, but I would not be terribly surprised if this was actually something that happened in the years following World War II.
Oh, I'd almost guarantee it. Yeah.
Because here's the thing, for as much as the Japanese people talked of honor and talked of their code and everything, Imperial Japanese were extremely cruel. And they pushed a lot of Asian people around. And I wouldn't be terribly surprised if there was a little bit of payback. Because it sure does seem like those guys are there to pick up a Japanese, they call them war criminals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which they're really probably not. They're probably, it's like not every person who fought for Germany in World War II was a Nazi, right. But if you were, after a while, if you were, a Filipino and the Japanese came, it probably wasn't a very good day for you. And certainly wouldn't have been a very good day if the Americans came and there was a big fight in your town, or whatever.
No, I'll probably butcher this, but the Americans, after bombing Japan, basically told their government, you cannot spend any more money on war.
Yeah.
You cannot. You can defend yourself.
They only have a defense force.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if has that changed over the last. Nope. Still the same, huh? That's crazy.
Nope. Because this is how I know this for certain. In the 2016 Godzilla, the big crux of the drama of that movie was the Japanese had to beg the UN for help.
Oh yeah, they didn't have the military stuff to fight Godzilla.
Yep.
Or whatever.
So the UN had to deliberate on that while Godzilla's just destroying Tokyo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but yeah, all of those people that had been dispersed throughout the world were, yes, war criminals, and that's why. I mean, I think he's not the older, he's the admiral or whatever you want to call him.
He was the officer. He's the higher
officer.
Yeah,
the Shogun.
The Shogun.
I am Shogun here.
Yes, yep. I think he's resigned to the fact because he knows there is no going back, even though he's still stuck in his mind as Japan being a high power of the world.
Yeah. Okay, so they there's quite a few of these soldiers. There's over a dozen of these soldiers that come on this boat.
It's an entire battalion.
It's a little platoon, yeah. I don't know the battalion, but yeah, it's a good sized platoon. And they show up on this island, and Doug and Shogun have the discussion about, okay, what are we going to do here? And Doug doesn't want to. He doesn't want to fight him. He knows this is his way off.
This is his way off.
But Shogun is like, this is my war.
He kills some people.
He kills a couple of them. Yeah. And Doug, meanwhile, he just kind of captures one and then puts his samurai sword up to him. Is like, I've got your guy, but he gets surrounded, and then
tell your officer this.
Yeah. And the guy says, the officer says that you can tell me yourself. So then he's like, okay. He hands his sword over.
Yeah,
he surrenders his sword to the commander, and Shogun sees this and isn't happy and runs off to the cave that they live in. And then there's a discussion between the commander, this Filipino commander, and Doug about, what they're there for, what's going on.
Who they're looking for.
They're not totally believing Doug's story, and Doug's like, "Well, do I look Japanese to you?"
Yeah, they said you're our prisoner. He's like, "The hell I am."
Yeah, exactly.
You're here looking for Japanese people. Do I look Japanese
to you?
Yeah, and that's a great little exchange, because it's perfect logic.
Yeah.
Right.
And
the Filipino commando you don't get the sense he's actually a bad guy, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right." And he allows.
Well, and you didn't kill any of our guys, so
And he allows Doug to go negotiate with the Shogun.
Yeah, because that was something that Doug also
to surrender
says.
himself.
Yeah, Doug also says that, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to get him unless you just send me.
He's going to kill all your guys and keep you on the run for years.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
so they let him go talk to him.
Right. And at that point in time, that's when, really the game is up for the Shogun, and he knows it.
There's a good scene too, like when they debate what to do when the Filipino platoon shows up. Doug is really honest about the conflict, I guess, between using his new samurai skills for honor and peace versus vengeance. He's like, you taught me these things. These things are used to kill. Why you say it's an art, but at the same time, these are tools that you have given me that are meant to kill.
Right.
So there's a reconciliation that you have to do with that as well. And he does. He's like, you're right, and he kind of he decides that he's going to continue his war and he's going to fight these soldiers. But Doug at that point is like, well, I don't know if I want to go that far. But he's going to use those tools to fight his own war when he gets back.
So I have a question about this, because they had an earlier talk too where the Shogun had said, if you fail, you must, is it seppuku or harikari? Seppuku.
Yeah.
Seppuku.
You must commit seppuku if you fail. What is the Shogun's failure here? Is the failure that Doug didn't fight with him?
He won't surrender. Surrender would be failure.
But he doesn't really need to necessarily surrender. He could win potentially against these guys.
Well, but
so it feels like he's kind of sacrificing himself for.
Well,
for
I think I think
you could definitely read it that way.
Yeah, he says to be captured is as bad as being being captured.
It's a failure.
Killed, it's a failure. So at this point in time, his own student isn't going to help him. He knows that it's just over, and the only honorable way out to his code is to sacrifice himself.
Right, but if Doug wasn't there, he would have fought.
Oh, he probably would have.
Most definitely.
He probably would have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at that point in time, he probably the upside to his own resignation of this, and also that's the other thing. Also, like he may have it may have been a situation where he had such he had carved out such a life on this that he could say that he would go back to Japan. But again, I think he was kind of resigned. He was always going to be on that island. And at that point, he can just, he can kind of end it here. And I think the upside to that or an effect of that was, well, Doug's sent, you see Doug riding off on the boat with the Filipino, cut to him landing on at LAX with his carry-on bag full of samurai swords.
Which is kind of hilarious.
It was just fantastic. I want to live in that world again, where I just carry my samurai swords on my carry-on luggage.
Yep.
And meets the cabbie, who gives him all the info. Meanwhile, really, like the gangsters are just kind of doing their thing. They're trying to take out a boss, an Italian mob boss, and they get caught up in the old classic junkyard double trap, and but come out on top of that one.
Yeah, there's there is more. A lot of it is in the States. You have so Maria can't afford to live at the house anymore, so she has to move. She moves in with her friend from the club who is dating one of the mob guys. Rico. That doesn't end well either. But she so that's why when Doug gets to the States, he can't find her. But in the in-between time, McGee reveals that I have been freezing you out. And I don't think you should be working. I think you should just be with me, and your son needs a father. To which she says, he don't need a mother like you for a father.
Yeah, I love
that. I love it.
Yeah.
And but he also begins to get physical too. He tracks her down at her friend's house, beats her up. And it's not so great. But right after that, Doug finds her, and they spend the day together. Oh, go ahead.
A little in between time, Doug starts killing some of the gang. Mm-hmm. And there's some question over who this person is that's killing everybody. Just some nut with a sword.
Yeah. So because they only know it's a sword too because of the coroner.
Police department or the
coroner has identified the blade cuts as samurai, and they're like, "What the fuck? That doesn't make any sense." They're falling over themselves trying to imagine who the hell is out there killing their people with the samurai sword. So then they talk to the Japanese gangsters, and they're like, "We don't use swords. We use guns."
That's pretty
Which
funny.
I think is pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how he has this. It's not a calling card. I don't know what you call it, but whenever he shows up at a scene, I'm talking about Doug here. Whenever he shows up at a scene, he unsheathes his sword halfway.
Yeah.
Before he goes into fight, and it's consistent throughout the movie. Yep. It's just a cool little thing that he does.
Oh, another thing he does is just appear off the side of the screen.
Yeah,
he just jumps in and like, I'm here.
Yep. Well, that's his training, man. He knows how to be a ninja.
Right. This would do so well for Black Dynamite. Because he would announce himself like that too. He would just hop in, and like, and I'm here, and he like just slices. It's like the scene with the nunchucks, and it's like, I threw that shit before I walked in. I love that movie. I love that movie. So anyway, so like he is starting to work his way up through the ranks of the Morelli gang, and basically I think he's more than happy just to kill everybody in this gang.
Yeah, I was kind of laughing because his idea was to get information from anyone he could, but he had to kill everyone.
Yeah.
He could not get information ever.
Yeah.
He's just like, I guess I have to kill everyone
I
and
guess I'm
find
just
somebody
killing
else.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we could have done this the nice way, but I guess I'm just gonna have to kill everyone now. Yeah.
And then eventually Morelli and McGee have or McGee, whatever. They have kind of a conversation about this. They have what they think is a positive identification that they're dealing with Doug.
Right, because
they're having trouble.
Well, at one
believing.
point, there is like, okay, who's
There's a survivor.
the samurai? Yeah, who's the samurai? Okay, well, this guy says it was a big black dude. That's all they got, and it's like, well, Doug was a big black dude,
But then they have someone who saw him, and then he looked at the picture. Rico, and Rico's like, yeah, this is the guy, and they're like, I can't be. We killed that mother,
Killed that mother.
And but they're like, McGee at that point is like, well, we got to assume it's him. Who else would it be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Corelli's like, well, everyone in this town wants to kill us.
Right. But a big black guy with a samurai sword, you know, who we have a positive identification from Rico on, and we have to assume it's Doug.
Right.
So what they do is they hire the torpedo, the hitman, the torpedo, to take him out.
Yeah, to which McGee is like, well, he says, it's like, trust me, he's the best. That's what everybody says. He's best.
Torpedo, he's our man. If he can't do it, he can't do it.
If he can't do it,
but
he just can't do it.
So Torpedo's asking around the same time that Russell does eventually find his wife.
Yes.
The cabbie had a lead. I don't know how he knows, and he doesn't really divulge how he knew exactly. He's just like, I know everything. I'm a cabbie.
He's Oracle.
He's Oracle. Another Oracle. So
you know what he is? He's the cabbie from The Shadow.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Totally.
But he takes Russell to meet his wife, and they have like a one-day encounter that's like the Naked Gun movies, where they do like 71 things all in this one day.
Yeah.
I can't
It's
believe
hilarious.
we only just met yesterday. But it's nice and sweet. The kid looks like he's terrified whenever he's playing with his dad, but
He just wants to be jamming on his little guitar.
yeah, he wants to
His
jam.
singular
God, I love
purpose.
that. I love it.
By the way, so James Monroe Englehart grew up to be, he's a voice actor for a lot of cartoons and stuff.
Really?
Oh, nice.
He was also in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Who was he?
Wait a minute. Let me look at his face.
Coriolanus Burt.
Okay, now I got to know. I think I got to look that up.
But yeah, so but no, he does. He was Oogie Boogie in The Nightmare Before Christmas in concert this year.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he was on DuckTales, the reboot of that. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, he's had a
Doug
really
Russell,
good career.
Son,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Son of
Little Jimmy.
Little
yeah,
Jimmy.
Little Jimmy. That's
Little
awesome.
Jimmy.
Good for
Yeah,
Little
he's had a hell of a career.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So so eventually, it basically comes down to, he's in the barber shop. Now, I find this scene to be really, really interesting. So the old black barber guy is like he's sort of cutting Doug's
Oh, he's
hair.
like 2 inches away from his hair.
And he's just like,
And it's important to note that he did identify Russell to Torpedo when he showed up. He's like, yeah, that's the guy.
yeah,
So then when he goes to get a haircut, of course.
right.
Yeah.
Now the barber is saying, it's like, hey, you've been watching the Dodgers or whatever, and he's like, nah, I don't care about baseball since Joe DiMaggio. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
But anyway, he says, you remind me a lot of of my son. Baseball wasn't so much his game, basketball was, and he became a Muslim. And I'm like, is this Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's dad?
I had the same thought. Or Muhammad Ali, but he doesn't play basketball.
No, he doesn't. But anyway, yeah. So the torpedo is there, and he plans on shooting him right there. But Russell knows what's up, and Doug, like, he flips around, he pulls out a sword. They fuck up that barbershop.
Yep.
They fuck it up.
It's great though too. He knocks the gun out of his hand with a towel.
Yes.
It's another Naked Gun kind of moment where a towel is like a weapon of war. But yeah, go ahead.
And then basically, ultimately, he defeats the torpedo, to which McGee is like, well, I don't know. He said he was the best. But McGee is also kind of thinking of this. McGee is a lot more ready to take on Doug than Morelli is. But Doug eventually finds Morelli and kills him with very
he finds
little.
He finds McGee first.
Oh, that's right. He finds McGee
Morelli.
first. Right, and
he
cuts off McGee's ear.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then he tracks down Morelli.
Yeah, before that, I've never seen this before, but before that, he hits the windshield. Doug hits McGee's windshield with his samurai sword, breaks his windshield with a samurai
Fuck yeah,
sword.
he does.
It was pretty
That
awesome.
was amazing. Yeah.
And he's like, where did he come from? Adding more mystique to his samurai ninja capability.
It's again, if he would have flown in from the side of the screen and it was just like, I'm here, motherfuckers, I would have believed it. I would have been like, well, yeah, it's like,
yeah, he should have done a flying kick into every freaking scene.
And then so then he goes to McGee's place. He cuts off his ear before he escapes, and then he goes to Morelli's, kills Morelli relatively easily. Although Morelli is kind of funny, he gets a little all over the place in his final moments, because he's also kind of like, kill me. It's like, no, you'll never kill me. Well, he kills him real easy, like.
Yeah, was there something wrong with Morelli's car? Because he tried to leave at first, and he's like, I can't leave. And then he tries to go in another door, and that's when he gets killed. I'm like, why didn't he just get in the car and drive away? He was trying.
Maybe Samurai sorted the
yeah, I wonder if he Samurai'd his alternator or something.
Yeah, because see, a samurai can also do the precision stuff too.
Yes,
like, it's not just
most samurais now work at auto mechanic shops because they can't be samurais anymore.
Shit, the last time I went to AutoZone to get like some lights for my car or something, it's like there was a samurai there. I'm like, I didn't even have to tell.
Feels like a Weird Al sketch.
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't even have to tell the guy what my car was. He just already knew. It was so magical. But anyway, so he, now the next thing that happens is McGee is at the hospital, and Rico brings in a present. And he's like, "Hey, this was left." First of all, he asks McGee, "How you doing, or how you feel?" He's like, I'm up in the hospital with my ear cut off. How do you think I feel? And then he says, hey, this was left for you at the front desk, this gift. And it's like, what the fuck is that? It's like, it could be anything.
Don't bring shit up here, you moron.
Yeah.
And what is it?
Well, it's...
What's in the box, Jeff? What's in the box?
It's Morelli's head. There's so many decapitations in this one.
So many.
Oh my god.
So at that point, McGee's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, and let's go to Mexico. But first, we got to go get Maria and Lil Jimmy,
and Rico's girlfriend, who is Maria's friend.
Right, and Maria's friend, Rico's girlfriend, which I think is just her name, is Rico's girlfriend.
Yeah,
she's
probably.
Like, hey, Rico, I don't like any of this.
Oh, and he kills the cabbie, too.
Yeah,
they did kill the cabbie.
Yep.
I
was trying to forget that.
Yeah, that was sad.
Super sad.
So, yeah, and like Rico's girlfriend's like, I don't like any of this. I don't like what we're doing here. And Rico's like, shut up, basically. That's like, he has no good excuse.
Well, she says, you could end this. And he's like, I can't end this. It's too late. He's like, just kill... She says, just kill McGee. Yeah, and he's like, that's stupid.
I
like,
can't do that.
Let's just go to Mexico instead.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like he's like, well, just kill him again. But I wouldn't get any references for my next job.
And then sometime around here, we haven't mentioned this. I'm sorry. Russell gets rolled up on by a cop.
Yes,
and the cop is like, I think they're going to kill him. But he's like, yeah, if we wanted to bring you in, we would have done so already. You're actually doing a job that we wanted to do for us, basically. So I'm going to tell you where they are.
Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah, he's got a joint down in Mexico. And he's like, hey, I kind of want to finish this. And like, Russell's like, fuck off.
Yeah, I'm going.
I'm going. And he's like, well, whatever. And so he goes down there and he decapitates so many people.
That's my note. Is like, now it's all heads cut off at McGee's in Mexico. That's like everything. Everybody's death.
Well, he also puts those heads on a pike for the next morning to scare off the rest of the Mexican goons.
Yep. And McGee had made a threat that he was going to kill Russell's son. Yeah. I don't know if he wanted him to give up or what he wanted him to do, go away at first. It changes after. But
yeah, everybody gets real schizophrenic right before they die in this movie.
Yeah.
So basically it's a showdown, and he's gonna shoot Maria and or little Jimmy, but then Russell, like Doug's like coming out from the tree line, like he's like screaming like a crazy person with his sword, and he gets winged by McGee, but that doesn't stop him. He runs McGee through and then pole vaults him up into the air. And at that point in time, it cuts back to Maria, and the look on her face is like, oh, I'm married to a crazy person.
That's exactly what I thought at that point. She's married a monster.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was not quite ready for this. The heads were bad enough. Now I'm seeing it happen. Right. Yeah. But so he kills McGee. And so it seems like it's going to end real nice and happy. Everybody wins. Everybody's good. Oh, gee, look, the family's all, together again. They're going to be all right. And then there's a gunshot. And Doug gets killed by
the police officer that had been giving him the information.
Yep.
I mean, that's such a big statement too, right? Like, he closes the circle, obviously, on this whole mess that's been going on in LA, but it's like suppression too, right?
Yeah.
The man is bringing Russell down. He can't let him go back to, he can't let him exist anymore because he's too dangerous.
Too dangerous.
Even if he didn't do anything. And
he's also done their dirty work, and now they can,
blame it all on him.
Close the loop and take all the credit. Yep.
Which is also another reason why this can't be a blaxploitation movie, because at the end the black lead didn't win.
Right. Yeah. So what did you guys think of that ending? I actually liked it. I was a little shocked.
I was shocked by it
too. I was shocked by it.
Because everything in the hour and 45 minutes up to that point made it seem like, oh yeah, he's going to get everything. He wins. He's the hero. He's going to get everything. But in the end, no. And it kind of makes sense also because like he's not really doing the honorable thing, right? Like he's giving into the vengeance. So in a way,
draw the sword for peace, not the cause of vengeance.
Yep. And it's in the end, it kind of comes across as karmic.
Yeah.
So. Yep. Most definitely.
No, I mean, I thought it was. I mean, it's some. I think the end is going to be liked by some, but hated by others. I mean, it does kind of pull the rug out from under you, but yeah, it kind of makes sense in the in the grand scheme of the story. That
I think for this movie that, like I said earlier, I thought was just going to be an action romp, there's actually like a meaningful story here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very surprised by that. And I'm glad, I did struggle through the beginning because of all the cuts and just the bad,
the deteriorating film.
Yeah,
that we were watching.
Film. Yeah. I mean, this kind of movie, and I don't know if you could make it again, is one that would deserve a remake of sorts.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think you could make a really good version of this that I think plays a little bit more of the passage of time. I mean, not that this isn't a good version, but I mean, I think you could update this.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I would honestly set it in the same time period. I wouldn't change the time period at all.
No, it makes a lot of sense for it to be in the past, because nowadays it would be harder and harder to disappear like that, but also there wouldn't be any old Japanese World War II guys around. You know,
I mean, in a way, in a weird way, Kill Bill is kind of like Tarantino's version of this story.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino's a huge fan of Cirio Santiago.
That makes a lot of sense.
I did not know that.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, in a lot of ways, Kill Bill is kind of this story, right? But taken to a very fantastical level.
Yeah.
But you know, she
actually, right here under legacy on Cirio Santiago's Wikipedia, Quentin Tarantino counts Santiago among his influences and based some of the characters in Kill Bill on Santiago's movie.
Well, there we go. That's not surprising.
It's here's the thing. I mean, like there's a cultural element that makes Cirio Santiago a relatively important director at that time. He was given a lot of black actors a lot of work, and it was something that they could then take and show. It's like, I mean, I can carry this type of part, or I can carry this type of weight in a movie or whatever. Jane Kennedy was also in The Mothers, which is that's a much more action-packed movie, but it's still kind of weighty in the sense that, there's a team of female action heroes, and it's like they are for real, it's like it does not feel forced, or it doesn't feel over the top, or anything changed to make it so that they could win. No, they're for real. They are for real. They're essentially pirates.
Pirates on a swift boat, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's pretty cool,
and they can handle themselves. And a couple of them won't take shit from nobody. but yeah, so it's like he did a lot of really, really neat and kind of cultural things. The problem is, and I think this is probably a problem that some people could have with this movie, because again, it's sold as this guy who's just death wishing his way through everything with a fucking sword, right? And yeah, the last 45 minutes or so of this movie is the action movie. It's what you're promised, but that first hour is a drama, and it's a story about a guy trying to find his way back home and reclaim.
Yeah, and that's where I think I wish that the first half of the movie had informed more of his actions in the second half. That he would have let himself reflect more on what he learned, right?
Sure.
That's where I think if you were to remake this movie and allow a lot of time to pass, that there wouldn't be so much immediacy in his vengeance. Yeah. And he would be able to kind of think about his actions in the context of the person he's become, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's more robotic in this version.
Yeah, a little bit. It gives you, it pays the dues that you expect the movie to pay from seeing the trailer in the last act, right? And I think it cheapens it a little bit.
A little bit. And obviously Chuck and I picked up on one thing. It's like there could have been something to where, as he's trying to reconnect after being possibly gone for years with his wife, she's seeing a monster, not really the man that she married. because that is totally what I saw in that face when she saw him catapulting McGee. But no, one of the things I think, Santiago is like, he's good at creating real characters. The problem with that, though, is that it becomes procedural, right? When you're creating things that seem more realistic, in the sense of how, like, you're seeing things where it's like he's learning these things and now he's applying these things, and the bad guys are working their way up through the ranks of being the top bad guys by doing X, Y, and Z. It becomes very procedural. Mm-hmm. And it's harder to like grasp hold of that. Like, he did a movie in the 80s called Silk, which is about a badass lady cop, which should, on the surface and the way that they try to sell it, it should be sold as kind of it's a sexy cop or whatever, right? But it's very slow and it's very procedural, and it comes across in a way that it's like, that's not exactly what people want to see. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of drama in this movie that actually is very, very good. It's just not the movie that you're being sold.
Yeah.
Which I find...
Well, and I think the version that we watched on Prime is the uncut version.
Yes.
There is an hour and a half or hour 36-minute cut. I bet you lose a lot of that drama.
I bet you do.
It becomes just an action movie.
Right.
Probably. Yeah. Which I probably would have liked less.
Yeah. Because this could have been a dumb revenge movie, which would have been fine. But to be honest with you, it's the drama that makes this movie a little more interesting at the very least.
It would have been more of a forced movie if it was cut to an hour and a half than what we actually got.
Right.
Which I'm totally okay with.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, now the writer of this, Howard R. Cohen. Here's some of the other things he's done. The Young Nurses, which I think is a Corman produced movie. Vampire Hookers, which was the same year as this one, which was also Santiago, which was released in that 2-pack. Saturday the 14th.
Wow.
He's not particularly great at the comedy. Barbarian Queen, Deathstalker 4, and then he did Jason the Wheeled Warriors, Care Bears, and Rainbow Bright.
Whoa.
Weird.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's bizarre.
Yeah. So he's had a career.
Yeah.
But yeah, he mostly, his second half of his career was mostly like doing cartoons and stuff like that. Although after doing some of those cartoons, he did like Barbarian Queen and Deathstalker 4 or whatever. But I mean, like, he seemed like he was a very hireable cartoon writer. Yeah. Huh. So anyway.
Gotcha.
Well,
yeah. So, anything else to add here?
No.
Not from me.
Think we've done it. What's next week?
Next week is Tactical Force.
Ooh, boy.
It is a 2011 film, I believe, by Adam Caltraro, which stars none other...
Oh, yes. Fine wine, that Adam Caltraro is.
Yeah, say what you want about Adam Caltraro. But Steve Austin is in this film. Michael Jai White. It looks like just a lot of fighting and explosions.
It looks like something that we're going to get a lot of messages from Jason. Very, very upset.
We needed some explosions, though, because we haven't had any explosions, and it's Force February.
Yeah, we need more explosions, for sure.
I guess we've had a couple, sort of. Yeah, we had the rocket launcher preacher blowing up a helicopter. That was
Bazooka Preacher.
Bazooka Preacher.
Yeah.
So that's next week. So look forward to that and come back. Jason, where can they find us?
You can find all of our fine wine at filmseizure.com. All of our writing, all of our videos on YouTube, all of our really anything, all of our podcast episodes, everything at filmseizure.com. But you can also subscribe to your podcast listening outlet of choice from the website as well. So look and see where you can hear us and add us. You can also get us on social medias. We are active on Twitter and Facebook primarily, and Instagram. So check us out there. Jeff, what do you got coming up on Monster Mondays?
Yeah, so the next episode of Monster Monday, I'm going back to the Gamera well for Gamera versus Virus. It's all right. It's a big giant squid monster. I like it.
Sweet.
Also, you can find my stuffs at bmovieanima.com. This Friday, you can read about Savage Weekend, which is a little movie that gets much derided, but I actually like it quite a bit. It was made before the slasher craze, but was released after the slasher craze begun, which is interesting because it still has a lot of the same like telltale signs of a slasher, but it was actually doing it independently of the genre. This weekend, as I had already mentioned earlier, on B Movie Anima, the series, go over to YouTube, subscribe to that channel, because I'm going to be watching another Cirio Santiago movie, TNT Jackson. And say what you will about Cirio Santiago, but the guy knows how to make a kung fu fight even better, and that is by having a topless kung fu fight. So check that out.
All right.
Yeah, Jeannie Bell does a topless kung fu fight, and that's fantastic. She was another person that was in The Mothers as well. So,
yep.
Yeah. But anyway, so you can check that out. Just go over to bmovieanima.com. Yeah, all the stuff's there. You can find stuff there.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
So, Chuck is up next with his selection for Force February, before we close out Force February with a Force adjacent movie, which actually comes to us as a suggestion from one of our fans. So we'll talk more about that next week as well. But until then, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.